Okay, hey guys. Welcome back to my channel. It's kind of funny, I watch videos, I'm like, I always start with hey guys, but how else do you greet people? So anyway, I'm just doing a get ready with me. I was having a hard time sleeping last night, and I don't know, I've been watching a lot of apologetics videos, especially for the Catholic faith. As you may or may not know, I don't know if I've shared on my channel, but I am Catholic. Still learning a lot. But anyway, just watching all these videos and like reading comments, comment sections, I kind of, I don't know, like, I just kind of been feeling this like nudge to talk about my conversion story, like just like my faith journey altogether. I guess, where do you start? When I was born. So I was born to my mom and my dad. My mom was raised Southern Baptist, or I think it was Southern Baptist, definitely Baptist, because her grandfather was a pastor, Baptist pastor, and my dad was born and raised Catholic, but then became lapsed as he grew up, and but still never really considered himself any other denomination, Christian. Now if you ask him, he's kind of like, I don't know, he's still lapsed. My eyes, he's still Catholic, but he's just lapsed. Anyway, so it's funny because when I told my godfather about my parents, he was like, wow, I'm surprised they ended up married, because Baptist and Catholic are like, but anyway, I didn't even put primer on. Sorry, this is what happens when you talk while you do your makeup, but it can't be helped. So anyway, my dad, God bless him, he still wanted us, me and my siblings, baptized Catholic. There's four of us in total between my mom and my dad. And my mom, three of us, so me and my sisters, were baptized in the Catholic Church as infants or as small children. And then my brother, my dad was looking to get him baptized, but there was some kind of thing that my dad disagreed with, or I don't know the details, but it was unfortunate, in my opinion. I'm biased. But anyway, but my mom, I think she agreed to it reluctantly because she didn't believe in infant baptism, as a Baptist, as I understand it. And I think the agreement was, they can be baptized, but they're not going to be raised Catholic, which is kind of, looking back now, I'm like, that's silly. But anyway, I'm just glad it happened. And so we were raised non-denominational, I would say, even though my mom was Baptist, or self-identified as a Baptist from what I remember. And anyway, she we weren't like avid churchgoers or anything like that. We would go now and again. Like, I remember as a small kid, like, we would go to like a Baptist church that sorry, I don't mean to like laugh, but like looking back, I'm like reminiscing on this, I'm kind of like, wow, people are right. Like, a lot of Protestant churches are in like, shopping malls and stuff like that. So this particular Baptist church in our city was in a little small shopping mall or plaza. And that was like one of my earliest memories of church, is going to that Baptist church. And we would like attend the little Sunday school that they had. And, you know, I remember praying in there. I couldn't have been more than like 5 or 6 years old. But again, we weren't like avid. My parents ended up divorcing when I was 8. And so my mom was kind of going through a transition in her life where she was, you know, single, you know, kind of like she had just lost a bunch of weight. She kind of was going out and, you know, doing her thing, for good or for bad, however you want to look at it. But my dad, you know, just kind of trying to put his life back together, because my dad had suffered a really bad injury at work. And you know, I haven't really talked to my dad in detail about like how he feels about his injury, because it left him permanently disabled. Like even the doctors were like shocked that he wasn't paralyzed, like the disability wasn't worse. But anyway, my dad's never really been like, he'll go to church like sporadically, but not like he's not, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent. But anyway, he suffered that injury, and then he's getting, you know, got divorced, and then just trying to get himself back up and like support 4 children. And it was a lot. And like my mom, like I said, she was just kind of doing her thing, clubbing and blah blah blah. You know, because she was a mom really early with me. She was she had freshly turned 19 when she had me, and it's really young. And you know, but anyway, sorry, I think all that contributed to us not really being in church. Like there was just a lot of chaos in our family life. And as I'm telling the story, it's kind of like I'm like making things are clicking for me. So I guess this is kind of like a therapy session for myself too, in a way. But anyway, sorry, I have no plan on what I'm doing for today's makeup look. I'm just kind of going with it. But anyway, where was I? So yeah, when my mom remarried, she remarried a guy that was professed to be a Christian. I don't know, also non-denominational. We started going to church when they got married, and we went to this church called like Grace Church or Grace Community Church or something like that. One of those like mega churches, at least here in Reno. And you know, same thing, kind of didn't go consistently. That marriage was very toxic. And then we also didn't go consistently too, because my parents shared custody of us. So we would go 1 month with my mom, 1 month with my dad. And so, you know, when we would go with our mom, maybe not every Sunday, but we would go. And then we wouldn't go at all with my dad. Like Sundays was like shopping day for us. And then, you know, my mom grew up with a lot of anti-Catholic sentiments. I think she believed in a lot of myths that are told about the Catholic Church. And so a lot of that rubbed off on me. Like I remember just like overhearing conversations she would have, or she would share them with me. Just kind of, I don't even remember like asking. Like I think she just kind of told me. And you know, you listen to your parents and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like they worship saints, like they worship Mary, like oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Like they're worshiping idols, you know. And I mean, on the surface, like yeah, like that's you know, if you don't know what the Catholic teaching is, like that's awful. Like even Catholics will tell you that if like somebody is putting Mary and the saints above Jesus, they are in error. Like they are bad. And the church has a history of correcting groups for doing that. So anyway, I'm not going to get into apologetics because I'm not an apologist. I am just learning so much of history of the Catholic Church. But anyway, sorry, I keep saying that. But anyway. So I apologize in advance. so she would tell me lots of stuff like that, you know, why do we need to confess to a pope, blah, 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 blah. You know, tell me about people she would meet that were Catholic or grew up Catholic and are now Protestant. You know, that the Catholic Church doesn't let people read the Bible. Like, it just, like, she kind of just painted this picture of, like, this horrible institution that just, like, was gatekeeping, like, the Word of God. And, you know, I really kept that in mind when I would meet Catholics. And, you know, just, like, growing up, I grew up in, I'm half Mexican, half white, by the way. My dad's Mexican, my mom is white. Or was white, because she's since passed, but, I just as like a background to kind of understand a little bit better, but so I would say my dad was culturally Catholic, if that makes sense. And I grew up with, like, going to school, like, I grew up with a lot of culturally Catholic kids, and, you know, I don't blame kids, because they don't even, like, if they're not properly catechized, if their parents don't take a genuine interest in their children's, like, faith journey from a young age, like, they're just gonna turn out culturally Catholic. Like, not always, you know, but not to paint with the broad brush, but I would see it often. Like, kids would come to school with, like, rosaries around their neck, but then, like, repping, like, gang signs and stuff. And I'm sure, like, you know, that was a put off for me. Like, I was like, oh, these Catholics are not serious about their faith. Like, they're just whatever. So, you know, I had my own prejudices and my own, like, idea of what Catholics were. They were just, like, Christians in name only, basically. And don't get me wrong, they do exist. They do exist. Anyway, where was I going with that? So yeah, I just had this preconceived notions about Catholicism without even doing any research, or, you know, and as a kid too, like, who wants to research anything, you know, it's for school. Like, the teacher needs to tell me, otherwise I'm not going to get a good grade. But, you know, even in school, they wouldn't really dive into a whole lot. Like, even when I was in college, like, taking, like, history classes, like, they would talk about, like, the Protestant Reformation, and just, like, kind of, like, not fully dive into, like, the nitty-gritty about what happened, what led up to that, with the breaking of the church. And, which is really unfortunate, because it guides, like, it kind of is, like, confirmation bias for Protestants. Like me, it was confirmation bias, like, oh yeah, like, the church was selling indulgences, and, you know, they were trying to, like, people were trying to buy their way into heaven or whatever, or, like, buy entry to heaven for their loved ones, and that's not biblical. And, you know, like, just kind of, like I said, confirmation bias. And then on top of that, like, you know, if you're not, like, if you're agnostic, or you're, like, atheist, I would assume that you hear these stories and you're like, yeah, this is, like, a faulty system, a faulty institution. Like, yeah, like, I'm not interested in, you know, Christianity in general, because they just can't get their shit together. Like, sorry, excuse my profanity. And I don't blame them. Like, we're not united as Christians. Like, I think a lot of us want to be, but there's just these myths about our founding church, like, the church that Christ found, which is the Catholic Church. So anyway, all that to show that, like, I really grew up with these notions, and even from a young age to my college years. And I remember, and it's funny, because I didn't have, like, any real connection with anybody that was, like, a practicing faithful Catholic until I got into college. And I joined, like, the InterVarsity, I think that's what they're called, on campus, you know. And that was kind of my church, because I I didn't grow up with, like I said, a sense of like obligation to go to church on Sunday. I didn't know what denomination I was. I honestly didn't know a lot about scripture. I didn't know a lot about Jesus. I kind of just fell into that category of like, well, I said the sinner's prayer, and I got baptized again when I was like 11. Sorry, you probably hear my kids in the background fighting, of course. And looking back now, I'm like, that wasn't valid because I was already validly baptized as a child, as a baby. But anyway, that's another thing, and I'm sure someone's gonna stumble across this and have their objections to a lot of what I'm saying, but this is my story and I'm gonna just tell it how it is. So, you know, hang on. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had to see what was going on with the kids. So yeah, I didn't know any faithful Catholics, you know, that actually took their faith seriously until I got into InterVarsity at my college, and we would do Bible studies together. It would be me and like a few other Protestants and then a few Catholics, and it was like, you know, I still had my reservations, even though like they were super kind, they were super like informative. They, you know, taught me a lot during the Bible studies. The Catholics, I mean Protestant too, but I noticed that the Catholics kind of took charge, not in a bad way, just more of like they took the initiative to get the Bible studies going. And I remember one of my memories of one of these Bible studies is they were like, okay, open up to, I think it was Maccabees. I forget what chapter or verse or what, I kind of even forget what we were learning. But I remember like flipping through, this is how ignorant I was to just church history, Christian history. I've got my new, the NV version, is that what it's called? I forget. One of the newer translated Bibles, Protestant Bibles. And I'm flipping through and I'm like, I can't find this book. Like, where is it? And they look at my book and they're like, oh, yeah, so we have, you have the Protestant Bible and we have a Catholic Bible. And I remember being like, there's a difference? Like, it was just kind of like, I was dumbfounded. I was like, wait, what? There's like, we don't just have the Bible, you know? And I remember just kind of being a little, just dumbfounded, not really embarrassed, just more of like, wow, like you learn something new every day. And, I didn't think much deeper about it. At that time in my life, I was very like doing my own thing, like very much in the world. And InterVarsity was kind of my only link to my faith in Christ. And I just like from there on, I just kept meeting, like I joined like the pro-life group on, we were the guinea pigs. We were like the pilot group for the like first pro-life group on club at my college. And it was led by, really strong Catholics. And we would get together, even just like socially, and it would be like very strange for me because like I remember even going to like one of the guys in our group, the club, he hosted it at his parents' house, and they had like the icons, and they had one of his brothers was becoming a monk, and it was just very like, you see things like that in the movies, and then when you meet people in real life that are actually very serious about their Catholic faith, it's just very like, whoa, like this is real, like there's really people out there like that believe this. And it's just it was kind of a culture shock, and just looking back now, I'm just kind of like, wow, I was very ignorant to a lot of things. But it was like me, one other like Protestant guy that was there, and I remember the other guy, he kind of seemed like he was like a little put off by like the Catholic culture that they had, the culture and faith. And but you know, it's whatever. It ended in a nice day. And so yeah, so then you know, fast forward in my life, I was still in college and I met my now husband, and he is a lapsed Catholic, but he's been coming around, you know. We've both are on our faith journey. I would never say that I'm like ahead of him or anything, but I think that we're just definitely in different places right now as far as our faith. But anyway, so he was definitely lapsed, and I was like, still didn't have a church. And I remember one gal in InterVarsity, she was like one of the leaders or like counselors or whatever, and she was like, hey, like, sorry for my weird, like, getting so close to the camera. My like setup's weird. I'm trying to fix it, but it's just gonna have to be. That's just the way it is. She approached me. No, I think we were having lunch or something, and she just wanted to see, like, you know, touch base with me and like make sure I was doing okay. And you know, she asked me like, do you have like a home church? And I was like, no. I thought it was kind of not a silly question, but I was just like, oh boy, here we go, because I'm learning so much and I'm just like, I don't know anything. Like, and InterVarsity is kind of hard to like differentiate things, because like it's open to all Christian faiths. So like you could be Catholic in there, you could be Baptist, whatever, you name it, you could be in there. As long as you believed in, you know, Christ, you could be there. So anyway, she asked me that, and I was like, no. She's like, well, you know, just think about like joining a church, because like, you know, once you graduate, like, you're not going to be in InterVarsity anymore, and like, you need to have a community of other believers. And I was like, okay. I took it to heart, and I was like, okay, what should I do? And at that time, my sisters were part of a Pentecostal church, and I don't know what the heck that meant. I don't know, like, literally, if you had given me a test on the different denominations of Christianity, like, I would have absolutely failed, and I still would today because I'm still learning. But anyway, so sorry, I might have jumped ahead a little bit. So no, yeah, so this is about the time I'm still going to college. My sisters are going to Protestant, like, Pentecostal church, and I met my husband and we're dating. So I get a little bit serious. I start, you know, attending this church, and I really was enthralled by the like pastor. Like, he was very very charismatic, and like the way he would speak on like subject matters that mattered to me, especially like, you know, on the sanctity of life. Like, he was not shy, and I was very like, yeah, you know, like, this is my church. And so, you know, I became a member, maybe unofficially, because I don't know, but like, I would, you know, I'd invite my husband, and he would go, like, but, you know, he kind of made it clear that it was kind of weird for him, because he grew up Catholic, and like Protestant church is very, very different than the Catholic Mass. And you know, in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't really matter to me, because this is the right way, and we should be going to a Protestant church anyway. I didn't tell him that, but like, in my mind, you know. But I was glad that he was willing to go with me, and that was a big yay to me. Which is kind of funny, because like, I was not like knowledgeable in the word owl, and I was sinning in more ways than one. Wow, that looks really loud on camera. So yeah, so I wouldn't have, like, if you had asked me back then, like, oh, were you Pentecostal, like, I would have told you I'm not sure. Like, I still felt like, even though I really would, like I said, I was enthralled, and I was like, I had embraced that church, I didn't know what that meant, and I wouldn't have put myself in in a sect of Christianity, I would have probably just still said like I'm non-denominational. Like in my mind, I was like, well, can't we just go to any church basically, except for the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is bad, right? Right? Like, I probably wouldn't have said it out loud, but I probably, like, in my mind, I was like, they're not real Christians, like, you know, which is so ironic now. I like think about it, I'm like, it's so ironic. So anyway, you know, years go by, my husband and I, you know, we get more serious, we end up marrying. This is probably like 3 years later, so we've been together for a while. You know, he proposed to me a year into our relationship, we got married 2 years later, and we weren't going to church. There was kind of like a falling out with my sisters after our mom died in 2015. At that point, like, I wasn't going to college anymore. I had basically dropped out, which that's a whole other story, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a way. But anyway, so yeah, my mom died, we had a falling out. I was just kind of like, yeah, like, I thought my sisters were being extreme in their beliefs and their views in Christianity, because I had none. I had no standard. So I was like, yeah, they're nutso. I don't need to listen to them. They seem extremist. And that's a whole other story too, because like, while my views on that situation have changed some of it has not. But not that I think my sisters are extreme or anything, just like the whole situation was very crazy. And especially with like church drama and blah, 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 blah. So then we get married. I'm still Protestant. Like, my husband wasn't willing to convert, and I wasn't going to push him. I was just glad that we believed in the Trinity, and that was all that I needed, you know, from him, to say, okay, like, I'll marry you. And then we, so yeah, we married. I was Protestant, he's lapsed Catholic. We weren't going to church. But then my stepdaughter, she, remember she came home one time and she had this pamphlet, and on the front had, the Virgin Mary. And I remember just kind of like, it was about baptism. And I remember kind of being like, it was weird because I wasn't like put off by it. I actually was very intrigued, because I was like, well, one, I was intrigued that she hadn't been baptized yet. And then I thought that was weird that she wasn't baptized yet, because I'm Protestant and I don't believe in infant baptism, right? Or so I thought. And I just had all these questions kind of whirling in my head, and I just kind of felt this like conviction about like, I'm not in, like, what now I would say, I'm not in communion with the church. I'm not in communion with Christ. And so, you know, just it went from there. It was almost like a catalyst. I was just kind of like, what do I believe about God? What do I believe about Christ? Obviously, over the years, I've seen really good Catholics. You know, they do believe in Christ. They do worship Christ. Like, and I was baptized as a Catholic, but then I was raised as non-denominational, and I'm so ignorant to so much, and I just don't, it's just like the self-reflection began. And I remember, so my godfather, but he was actually one of my professors in college, and I took a few of his classes, mostly for like philosophy, those kind of areas. And I remember we would chat all the time, like after class. Like, that's when he told me, like, he thought it was really strange that like my parents ever got together, because my dad being a Catholic and my mom being a Baptist, like, that was a kind of a recipe for disaster. But you know, it happened. It worked, I suppose. I mean, kind of, right? But I think if it wasn't for my dad being lapsed, it probably wouldn't have, they probably wouldn't have even stayed together. My dad was more serious about his faith. But yeah, so I remember just thinking, like, I was reaching out to some of I reached out to a couple people that I knew were Catholic and that were in the pro-life club or were in InterVarsity, and unfortunately, you know, they had moved on, they had, you know, lived in different states, and I just wanted some questions answered, like, from the mouth of, like, a Catholic, you know, somebody that I knew I could trust, that, like, had been in my life for years, that, like, we've done things, we've worked together, like, there's no real reason for them to lie to me in my mind, you know, like, I knew that they were friendly, you know, it wasn't gonna get, like, hopefully it wasn't gonna get, like, heated or anything, or they wouldn't get defensive if I asked certain questions. And then I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, Professor McCoy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to reach out to him. And fortunately for me, very, very fortunate for me, he was still in Reno and he was still teaching at the college. And so he agreed to meet up with me, and we met up at a Starbucks, and I asked pretty basic and very common questions about the Catholic faith. So, you know, Marian dogma, even though I didn't even know that term, I was just like, what do Catholics really believe about Mary? What do they really believe about the saints? What about the Pope? Like, and these are all very, very, like, common questions, but for some reason very contentious, like, between Protestants and Catholics. And, you know, he answered them really easily, and, you know, he didn't make a fuss about it. And honestly, like, I'm a very simple person. I think I'm a average of intelligence, you know, of an American, I guess, if that makes sense. I can't even get my grammar right. But I think I'm of average intelligence, and, you know, he laid it out pretty simply for me, and I was like, well, I can't really argue with that. Like, he didn't have to go into, like, deep theology or, like, history. It just was kind of, you know, cut and dry. And so it kind of was like, those were the things that were, I wouldn't even say, like, holding me back, because I hadn't really seriously thought about converting to Catholicism. But there was something in me that was like, I feel spiritually homeless. Like, I wouldn't have coined it like that back then, because I didn't know exactly what I was experiencing. But looking back now, I'm like, yeah, I definitely felt spiritually homeless. I felt like ignorant to my faith. I felt very just lost. And, you know, I didn't know then, but then, like, years later after converting, sorry, spoiler alert, not really though, right? It dawned on me that there was something supernatural, something from God that was pulling me to the Catholic Church all along, all my life in small ways that I just didn't recognize, you know, because you're a child and just living life, and there was a lot of trauma that was going on at home. Not like, you know, that's a whole other story, but I wasn't really examining things deeply, you know, on a spiritual level. It was just a gradual journey, and there's a lot of stuff I've missed in my story, but, like, as far as, like, I think I'm just giving, like, the overview, if that makes sense. But so one of the first signs the earliest sign I can remember being pulled, or at least curious about the Catholic faith, I had to be, like, I want to say it was like 7 or 8, and I remember I don't know if I was digging in my mom's drawers or she asked me to get something out of her top drawer, and I went in there and I saw 2 rosaries. At the time I didn't know what they were. One was pink and one was blue. And I remember asking my mom, like, oh, like, what are those? Like, to me, they were just like these pretty, shiny necklaces, right? And I remember, like, oh, what are these? And she's like, oh, those are from when you guys got baptized. And I was like, oh, can I have one? And then she's like, no. And I was like, why not? And she didn't, I don't know if it's because my age or like she didn't really have the words to like explain why she didn't want me to have the rosary. And it's kind of interesting, her being so like anti-Catholic. Sorry, that sounds really harsh. She wasn't like, obviously she wasn't that anti-Catholic because she married my dad. But like the fact that she never got rid of them or gave them to my dad, like, or maybe she did later on, I don't know. But it says something to me. And I remember just still like for a long time like wanting that, like one of this, probably the pink one, I wanted the pink one, I'm sure, the rosary, and just kind of like wondering why I couldn't have it, like just not understanding like why I couldn't have a rosary. So that was kind of like one of the earliest memories I have of a pull or like a nudge towards the Catholic faith. And then one of a really, actually, I don't know which one came first, that one or this one, but this other memory I had, my mom's mom was having a yard sale, and in her yard sale, she had this statuette of Mary. And I didn't know anything at this point, like I was very young, I don't know, but I remember just like being drawn to it. And I remember asking my grandmother if I could have it. And I was going to give it to my other grandmother who was Catholic. And again, I had no idea about Catholicism, Mary, like literally no idea. I don't even think I knew who it was. But I just had this pull to like ask her for it and then give it to my other grandmother. And for me, that was another pull. Some people might be like, oh, you're reading into those too much. You know, kids gravitate towards different things. Hang on, there's a crisis. I'm back, sorry. Kids keep fighting. Well, not fighting, but, you know, accidents happen. Playing, somebody gets hurt, crying, blah, blah. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so that was one of my earliest memories. And then, another one was when I was, I want to say 18 or 19 years old. Sorry, that was the toilet. I had a potty break too. I remember I was thrift shopping with my mom and my sisters, and I went to go look at the counter, and in the jewelry counter, and there was this, I don't even know why, like you could tell it was old, it had been used, it was I mean it was intact, but whatever original color it was, like it had since been worn down. It was a rosary. And if you had asked me back then, like, would you ever convert to Catholicism, I probably would have told you hell no. Like, genuinely, I probably would have said that. Just because out of my own prejudice and my own ignorance, I would have said that. But so then I bought it. And I used it as an accessory. And looking back now, I'm like, oh, that's not good. But it was also hypocritical. I'm like, I know that this is a Catholic thing. I used to criticize classmates for wearing a rosary, but then being gang members, not that I was a gang member, but you know, just like not truly believing in what you're wearing. You know, and that could be said for a lot of people that wear a cross as an accessory, and they don't even profess to be Christians. Like, it's disrespectful. So then I bought it and I wore it as an accessory, and I kept it, and you know, never used it properly. And then another memory I had, no, I already said that memory, but it was when my stepdaughter came home with the pamphlet on baptism with Mary on the front. All this to say is that there were these small, seemingly unimportant moments where I was drawn to a sacramental or an icon, which I guess an icon is a sacramental. And it just didn't make sense, because my worldview, my faith at the time would have said, like, no, like, you have no business with a statuette of Mary, or, you know, a rosary, or even, you know, I should have ripped up that pamphlet with Mary on it, and how sacrilege, and, you know, just the stuff. But looking back now, I'm like, I feel like she was always calling me to the church, her son's church, Jesus Christ's church. And something I left out was that when I started questioning everything about my faith and where do I belong, do I even belong anywhere, like, I remember being like, okay, well, if I'm gonna devote myself or like become a member of any kind of group, it needs to be the original group. Like, every Catholic I've met has been knowledgeable and real in their faith, and there was no denying, like, the Catholic Church is Christ's church, is the beginning of the church. And, you know, one thing that my godfather had mentioned when he was answering all these questions for me was, you know, Protestants break into so many different, you know, you could have a disagreement and then start your own church. Like, you could hate what your pastor said and then start your own church. And I thought that was a very valid thing, because I had witnessed it. And you know, just like the bickering and disagreements, and that's okay. Like, that happens even in the Catholic Church. Like, there's disagreements. That's not what I'm criticizing. What I'm criticizing is that pastor could disagree and just start his own church. Like, you know, just cut out whatever the last pastor was preaching and do his own thing. And like, I've witnessed that, and I've heard of it, and I've seen it. And you know, I was just like, I don't want that. Like, I'm already so confused. Like, I'm already so confused on what is a Pentecostal versus a Baptist versus a whatever, you know. And I know this isn't really a unique confusion for people, because like a lot of people end up converting to other faiths because there's just this confusion. Like, how do I know what you're saying is true about the Bible or God or Jesus? You know, and for me, it just was a simple answer. Go to the source, go to the very beginning, and that is the Catholic Church. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people that are smarter than me, and they are scholars or apologists, you know, for Protestantism, and they would ask really deep questions. And I've even watched like videos on conversions from Protestantism to Catholicism, and there's like young men that are like, they dive deep into it. Like, it took them years before they converted, you know, like discerning whether they were going to convert or not. And that's not my story. Like, it took me one meeting with my now godfather to realize that, like, there is a home for me, and that is Christ's original church. And I, you know, when I went through RCIA, I still had a lot of bad habits. So I wasn't really, you know, at the time I was pregnant, you know, my husband and I were going through some financially difficult times. You know, my husband was going through some health issues. It was just a very chaotic time. So I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to my, you know, the catechism, and just like the effort of the priest trying to catechize us. And so, like, when I say that I wasn't properly catechized, it's not really, I'm not trying to blame like the priest or the program. I'm blaming myself. Hi, baby. Because I just was so distracted, and and also too, like, I don't know that not that I didn't take it seriously, but I was just kind of like more excited. Like, I just want to become Catholic. I just, whatever you say, which I know some people are going to be like, oh my gosh, like you're going in blind. But no, it was like, I'm paying attention. There was nothing that was really like alarming to me, but like when we get sent home with like homework, and I was just kind of like, blow it off like 80% of the time. But I knew one thing for sure, is that I was not going to learn everything I need, like learn everything in the RCIA program, that it was going to be a lifetime thing, like a lifetime learning curve. And it's so true, because I converted at the Easter of 2019, right before I had my daughter. I was literally 8 months pregnant when I was confirmed into the church. And I was lapsed, like right off the gate. I wasn't going to church. And that's bad. And it took a while to realize, like, oh, like I started learning things once I really like started to dig deeper, and like, you know, because I started to pick up that I wasn't like, I was being Catholic in name only. It was like, again, another thing that I was always criticized, and I was doing it. So then I started to dig deeper. I started reading the catechism, and I was like, this was like last year, and I started like digging more, watching a lot of videos, and just, you know, following a lot of podcasts. And I've learned a wealth of knowledge, but I'm also like super like, I'm still very a lay person, non-scholarly, like, but I'm learning a lot. And I just, sorry, I don't even know how I'm gonna end this video, but like, I just felt so like compelled to make this video. When I also want to do my makeup. It's the only time the only time I have to myself some days, you know, with the kids, and also being pregnant with their baby. But I think, you know, and it's, you know, I've had dry spells, and but I've just found so much hope and renewal in the sacramentals of the Catholic Church. You know, the sacramentals that Christ has given us through our priests, you know, and, you know, confession, and my marriage. We got married again in the Catholic Church, and it's you know, had my husband take his faith a little bit more seriously, you know, praise be to God. And I guess I'm making this too because maybe my kids will watch this later and they'll kind of understand where I was coming from. And I hope that they will always, no matter what their journey is in life, maybe they'll grow apart from the church, but then maybe they'll come back. I mean, that's the whole story of the prodigal son, right? And maybe this video will kind of like inspire them to stay strong in their faith and stay true to the church, and, you know, stay in friendship and communion with Christ. You know, and it's kind of like a part of my testimony. Maybe it's not so effective with like non-believers, but I think if you're a lapsed Catholic, or if you're a questioning Protestant, you know, and you feel this, like, you're kind of like similar to me, where you just kind of feel homeless, like, I would highly suggest like looking more into the, you know, the original church, the Catholic Church, and figuring out what it is that you feel is missing, because I guarantee you that it's in the church. That sense of really wanting to worship God in a what's the word? Like, non-selfish way. That was another thing too, like, I can never jive with when I would go to Protestant churches, is just like, Trent Horn made a good point on one of his podcast, but he was talking about how like the worship portion of church service is like the singing and the music part, but it should be the entirety of the service. You know, and somebody could argue that it is, but I could never like get into that like personally. And there's something about the mass that is just so beautiful and so like rich, and it really humbles you, and it makes you uncomfortable in the right ways, like getting up and then, you know, getting down on your knees and seeing Jesus in the Eucharist and knowing that you are unworthy, but that you get to experience his church together with other fellow believers, and that we are going to take part in Christ, like he's about to enter us. And you know, and that all the focus is like straightforward at the cross, and it's not at each other. We're not drinking coffee and greeting other people and hi, how are you doing, how's your mom, like, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, you know, at my parish, like, people do that before and after mass, mostly after, I've noticed, but like it's not like the sole focus is on Christ and the worship that he deserves. And it's not about touchy-feely. Did I feel like the pastor's, you know, sermon didn't make me feel good, you know? And again, this is all my experience, but I find that there's a lot of patterns, or not, I don't want to say patterns, similarities to my testimony with other people's testimonies that convert to Catholicism. There's just something missing. There's something deep and rich, and that it just makes me sad, because I feel like we're a whole big family. We're universal. That's what Catholic means, right? It's universal. And there's a whole family, a whole church that is here on earth and in heaven, and we're all working together for the will of God. And there's a whole rich history and a whole just goal, and God in his beauty and knowledge and wisdom allows all of us to work in his will, like to work for his will, and he lets us take part in it. Like, we get the honor of being a part of it, even in our small little corner of earth, you know. Like, I'm a mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm a wife, and you know, some people look down at that and they think it's like whatever, but I do what I can in my little part of the earth that, you know, that God is calling me to do. And as long as I'm following his word and I'm following, you know, what the church teaches, that is not in contradiction to the Bible, to scripture at all, I do those things, I'm doing my part in his will. And as minimal or minuscule as that might seem, but we're all called to be part of that. And we all get to call upon people, you know, saints that have literally been martyred for their faith, and we get to pull on their prayers, their petitions for us. We're not alone, you know what I mean? Like, we're not homeless, we're not, yes, you can go straight to God. You know, the Catholic Church does not teach against that, but it's just like, one of the really good like examples I heard was like, if God puts a manager in front of you, right, and you have an issue, and instead of going straight to the manager to like help you out with this thing, and you go straight to God, like, you're kind of telling God, like, I don't really care who you put closer to me to help with this, or like, you know, I don't really care about these people's experience. what they went through, how they might be able to help me. Like, sorry, like, I don't really care to work in communion with your church. Like, I just want to go straight to you, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, if you know that there's holier people than you that are willing to pray with you and pray for you, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? You know, and that includes Mary. And I think through the sacramentals was always trying to draw me close to her son, to let me know that he wants me part of his universal church. So anyway, that is the conclusion of the makeup. Very simple, but by the way, if you look at my last video, I showed you what I'm using for my winter capsule. So check that out. But also, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it touches somebody out there that might be questioning. And in the long run, for my 3 babies and any future babies I might have, stay in friendship with Jesus. Stay in friendship with him. Stay in communion with his church. And, you know, if you do stray, just know that you take hold of sacramentals. You go and you confess, and know that you will always be forgiven. And that, sorry, I'm gonna like cry. That this world is temporary, and we have another home, and I want you to be there. I want you to be there. Sorry. I was in the middle of crying, and then I lost storage on my phone, so it's a way to stop somebody from crying, right? Anyway, glory be to God. And next video, I think I'm gonna do what would I keep if I lost all my, or what would I repurchase if I, sorry guys, I cannot get my thoughts together. Sorry, I got really emotional. One of those like videos where you kind of like think about what you would repurchase if you lost all your makeup. I'm debating between that or just like what's my favorite out of my makeup collection. So hopefully I'll be doing that soon. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.